I guess just for anyone who's unfamiliar with who you are or what you do, I guess just give us a brief rundown about what you do.
Sure. So I'm AJ Mattioli. I own and operate Mattioli Productions, which is a queer film production and distribution company. We produce films with queer content made by predominantly queer artists. We distribute films that are within the same spectrum of the LGBTQIA plus community. And we try to essentially make films that people want to watch that are of high quality and make sure that we distribute things that have nice production value. This way the queer community can enjoy really well made films and not feel like they're stuck with YouTube videos all the time. So trying to fill that niche a little bit and trying to get some money in the pockets of our queer family members.
It's definitely an important market to hit, I think, in today's, just like for exactly the reasons that you said. It's very hard, I find, to find movies that represent the LGBTQ plus community and sort of the non-stereotypical, or like the way that's been seen dozens and dozens of times. So I think that, and to sort of skip ahead a little bit, the films that you recommended from your production company were a very nice breath of fresh air. I can definitely attest to the quality that you speak of right there.
Thank you. I named my company after it's my last name, and I have to do right by my family. If I'm going to use the last name, I got to make sure that to keep the quality of the family name going and up. So, it's the family name pressure.
Gotcha.
So to make sure everything is of high quality and good.
Gotcha. Well, you're definitely living up to that quality standard, if that means anything.
It does. Thank you.
So I guess let's jumping off of that, let's talk about how did you get your start. So the way that I typically like to word that is whenever I listen to interviews with like producers or directors and they talk about like when they were young and like, oh yeah, I'd always play with the family camera in the backyard or make movies with my friends, but typically they kind of cite one particular moment or one movie or one show that like really clicked with them, and that's what made them realize, no, that's what I have to do, that I have to be a filmmaker, I have to be a producer. So what was your background like, and do you have a moment like that?
I definitely do. I'm actually surprised it took me so long to realize this is what I want to do. Considering everything in my past was movie oriented. I was not a student. I was not I just didn't do well in school. I didn't, it was the 90s and they didn't know how to teach kids who learn differently. So after high school, I got a job over at Blockbuster Video. Rest in peace. And it was amazing. And I was making $13 an hour in 2001, and I was like, I'm going to work here forever. Not even, it was 2000. I was like, I'm going to work here forever. And my parents were just like, please go to college. You don't know what the future holds. Thank goodness that they pushed that narrative because, Blockbuster didn't last. And, I said I would give them 2 years of college, and if I hated it, I was allowed to quit, right? And then second semester freshman year, I was miserable, and one of my friends said, why don't you take a communication course with me? They're really fun. You just get to watch movies and review them. And I was like, oh, I can do that. And I started realizing there was actual jobs and things I never really thought about. As a person that's been doing carpentry work with my father my whole life, I didn't know there was a thing called the art department that you can go in and make these insane sets and make these incredible props and all those things. I had no idea there was a lighting department. I knew people were there, with grips because I live in New York and I've passed enough film sets, but I didn't realize it like on a small level that people were doing that, on an independent level that people were doing that. Hell, I probably didn't even know there was independent films. And then my friend Debbie Dufresne, who, if she happens to listen, she just got married. Congratulations. She was the one that said, watch, go and take communication class with me. And I picked up a camera and I made a movie called Women's World, which was, about how women get paid less than men, and it was done to some bizarre soundtrack and experimental and weird and artsy and bizarre and in all the greatest ways, in my opinion. And it had me hooked. It had me hooked from all the way from film theory to making the movie, and every single part about it. I mean, I'm 40 years old. I've been making movies for over a decade, working in the business, in different ways for over 15 years. And just 2 weeks ago, I PA'd for the Video Music Awards for MTV, because even if I'm serving coffee and taking out garbage, I'm part of it. And the minute I became part of it was the minute I became obsessed with it. And I can't imagine doing anything else. And after 17-ish years being in the business, I'm not really sure I'm qualified to do anything else. But, so here we are.
Well, that's definitely a very inspiring story. And I mean, like, you look no further than, like, Quentin Tarantino always touts that he started off at Blockbuster and just sort of dove headfirst into it. So it's...
you just watch movies all day, and one of the things about Blockbusters, you were allowed unlimited rentals, and you didn't have to pay for anything, and now that seems so unimportant with things like Netflix and stuff, where you have millions of movies at your disposal all the time. But at that time, you really had, it was $5 to rent a movie, or $4.33 to be exact, if you lived on Long Island, New York, in the Ozone Park area. People complain about $10 for Netflix, and I'm like, one movie was $4.33. Like, stop complaining. But you didn't have, because of the money, it was a privilege to be able to rent a movie back in the day. So working there and having my hands on all those movies, I didn't realize that whole time I was essentially just studying and learning how to do things, and learning what kind of movies I liked, and how, getting to then dissect them, because college taught me to dissect them and figure out, how they were made. It really was kind of a pre-college education, even if it's just watching movies and being, too close to the screen all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. I think Stephen King has a quote where he says, if you want to be a good writer, you have to read a lot and you have to write a lot. You can't really claim to be a filmmaker and not sort of expose yourself to a little bit of everything.
100%.
It's just one of those professions where you have to be a full-time student as well.
100%, especially with scripts. And as fast as, I made a documentary called Words, and it's all about words that we use to identify ourselves, and words that we associate with our identity, and we just constantly see how that changes. And you read scripts now, scripts that I've, movies I've put out in the past, where I'm like, oof, that wording isn't great, or oof, the way I phrase that is a little problematic. And you have to constantly be reading scripts and learning new things, and staying aware of what's important, and putting your best foot forward. Because if you stop that, you're going to be making movies that nobody wants to see, or are offensive, or have problematic features in it. So it's extremely important to constantly watch not only your Scorseses and your Spielbergs and your Cravens, but watch the newer directors, watch the people that are up and coming, because the 22-year-olds, they might not have the experience behind them, but they sure as hell know what people want to watch these days. So listening to the youth, and taking the talent of the experience, but the knowledge of the youth, and combining them is crucial to a filmmaker.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. So one thing that kind of stood out to me just there is you're talking about you have all these years of experience working in the film industry, but I think a lot of times when people talk about like their sort of career in film, they talk about like, I started off as a PA and I worked my way up to this position and now I couldn't be happier. But now here you're saying that you still do a little bit of everything after all this time. So is there one particular role that you enjoy more so than others? Or do you just kind of love all of it?
I mean, I love all of it. Obviously, no one's dying to be a PA and take out garbage. But you do get to, be involved, and that's the most important. And, without PAs, nothing would get done. But I would say, like, outside of producing and directing, art department is my world. I got my start. I walked into a film set to be a PA, and I was lucky enough to have brought some of my tools with me. I had a car, so I decided I'll throw in some tools. And as I walked in, the one of the set builders was getting fired and screamed at by the producer. And I walked in with my tools in both hands, and the producer just looks at me and goes, "Hey, you kid, you know how to build things?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, I could build whatever you need. I've been doing this since I was a kid. What do you need?" And he was just like, "Good, you're on the set construction team." And I was like, "Okay, sounds good. Sounds good." And because I had such a good background with that, I just didn't have a resume because it's hard to be like, "Oh, I do things with my dad."
Exactly. Yeah.
On a resume, like I've fixed broken things at friends' houses. Um, but I did have a lot of experience, and with that, I kind of grew within the art department. I went from being an art department builder to an art director to a production designer for indie films relatively fast, which is how I got my directing career. I'm not gonna name the movie or the producer who asked me to direct for him. He pretty much, at that time, I was identifying as a lesbian. He didn't know any of the lesbians because he's just a terrible person and doesn't care about anybody. It's not white, cis, and male. So, but he came up to me and said, "Do you want to direct a lesbian movie that I wrote that he had no business writing?" And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to kick a gift horse in the mouth, even if the gift is coming from a person who I'm not fond of. And I directed my first film, and I kind of saw how I'd worked for him for a while, and I didn't like how he treated actors or actresses in particular. I didn't like how he talked to his crew. Everything felt very manipulated and mean, and I said, I can do this better. I can do this nicer, and I can do this fairer. And that's how Mattioli Productions was born. I said, I don't want to make I don't want to make more heterosexual movies. I want to make only queer content, and I want to pay people correctly. I want to treat them correctly. And I want to show them the respect that most producers on the higher end of movies don't show their crew and don't show their their cast. So as much as I love art department, I really do feel that taking on those positions and showing actresses that they can be respected is really my main jam.
And it's definitely an important thing to tout. That's something that there's a lot of horror stories out there. So I mean, that's a shame that is something that needs to be touted. But that is very important. Again, just providing a voice for the voiceless in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it really does feel. It's weird to get a thank you. I get a lot of thank yous from the women on my set that anytime I had an issue, they came to me and the issue was dealt with. And anytime, if I saw something that wasn't okay, I said something. And to be thanked for basic respect is a weird thing. I love the thank you. So don't get me wrong, like it means I'm doing it right. But I don't feel like I'm doing anything that shouldn't be the basic standard of how you speak to women.
Exactly.
And how you speak to people. Like not even just women, just, I found as a trans man, the way men, and we're not going to do the not all men thing because my father's a great man, and the ones who are great, no, I'm not speaking about them. But I noticed as a trans man, when I was identifying as a woman, cis men would talk down to me in a very mansplaining way, and then as a man, it's more aggressive. It's an instant like you're an idiot for not knowing this. So I try to make sure that both my men and the women and all my non-binary loves are all respected and spoken to with an even tone. And that doesn't, I'm not saying that things don't get crazy. I have definitely screamed my head off about the amount of money that things was costing me, and lost my mind at my director of photography before. And I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't had a crew member throw a C-stand at me because it's movie making and tensions get high and you spend, 14 to 16 hours a day. And a lot of times my films are in another state. That's where we have more room. So we're spending not only the 14 hours together on set, but then we're also living in the same hotel together or the same location together. So
Right.
tensions get high, and as they do with family, if you're spending that much time, and you do become a family on set. But as far as the basic common decencies, you know, we make sure that all of that's handled, even in our call sheets. We put, right next to our name, I put a whole column that says gender and how do you want to be referred to. And the minute someone comes at me with like, either A, why do I have to do this? I'm obviously this gender, or, a oh, call me madam or king. I'm like, get off my set. You're not what we're looking for. You're out. Like we make sure the respect is from the first time we have a schedule put out till the end of the set. So that's how I kind of got into it, and that's why I do it, and how much I love it. And yeah, so I still, I do everything, but when push comes to shove, I'm a producer at heart, making sure everyone gets treated the way they should be treated.
It's a great philosophy and a great business model to have. So, you
Yeah.
talked about your start, kind of like what made you want to form your own production company. So, let's talk a little bit about once that finally gets off the ground and like those first few movies you make or produce. How was that transitioning from sort of like being in the like more on like the crew side of things to being like the captain of the ship in a lot of ways?
It was really great. It was a relatively easy transition for me. At that time, I was already doing stage management work for theater. I do a lot of theater as well, stage management, lighting, deckhand work, whatever they need. Like everything else in my life, it's whatever you need. If you're paying, I'll do it. um, as long as it's in the entertainment business. So I was already leading crews as stage manager. I was already doing a lot of technical direction, which is leading a lot of carpenters. So being at the head of the realm, being in charge was not anything that was new to me. It was just a matter of reevaluating how to change that for the film industry. Lucky enough, with the experience that I had, and like any producer worth their weight in salt, you hire people that know better than you. At this point, I will say that I've learned a lot about lighting. I've learned a lot about different departments because of how amazing my crew is, and knowing that when I speak with a director of photography, that they normally know how to make the shot better, and that's what they're being paid for. So listen to them, and I think that's a very important part for anyone that's leading any team, is to listen to the people around you, and obviously knowing when it's time to make the final decision and when you have to just put your ideas in front of everybody else's because you're running out of time. But for the most part, I think, yeah, I think the transition from crew to the leadership position was easier for me because I was already kind of at that level on different aspects. I just never was in charge of that much money, which is a big difference, or getting that much money, which is also a huge problem within the independent film world. The amount of times that I've been at a bar and someone has come up to me and said, "Oh, I illegally downloaded your movie Kill a Unicorn the other day. It was great." And I'm like, and then the next sentence is, "Can I bum a cigarette?" And I'm like, so not only did you steal my movie, but you are now asking me for a cigarette? Like, now you're costing me money. So it's really
Smart
hard to
move
get
there is to say that yeah, the one cigarette that's the price of the movie ticket, and hand it over.
hand it over, baby, hand it over. I'm like, movies don't make them, and so it's really, that's probably the most difficult part, is getting funding. And being able to, everybody wants an amazing movie, but no one's, everyone thinks that, Brokeback Mountain is going to happen with no money. And it's like, support the filmmakers at the very, beginning of the process. This way, at the end, there's an amazing movie for all of us to enjoy. $5 less on a shot goes a long way, goes a long way for a filmmaker. So that's probably the most difficult part is making this work when you don't come from money, when you don't have I have a very supportive family, and when I need a couple of extra $1,000, I'm lucky enough to be able to ask them for that. But anyone that makes movies know a couple of $1,000 isn't making. It's paying for lunch. It's not paying for anything more than that.
Right.
So that's definitely the most difficult part of going from a position that made you money into a position that you have to find money to pay people with is definitely difficult. But we're getting better at it as the years go by, and people are starting to recognize us, and we're starting to get some sponsorships. So things are slowly but surely happening. So that's great.
Definitely, and just looking at your website, it's full of accolades and a lot of really impressive achievements. So, a little belated congratulations on that. But
thank you. Yeah, I'm very, very blessed. And as far as success in getting my films out there, it doesn't always have to success doesn't have to translate to dollar bills. I'm more about getting enough money to make my next movie, get enough money to make my next one. So I'll never be rich. I'll always live in this very tiny room in Brooklyn. It is what it is. But I'm able to continuously make movies, and to me, that's the success that I want, and luckily the success that I'm getting.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about some of your projects then. So you said that your Mattioli production's been around for 10 years now, correct?
10 years, yeah.
What have been some of your favorite movies that you've either made or produced in that 10 years?
I would say my favorite experience thus far filming has definitely been Killer Unicorn. Killer Unicorn is a movie I partnered up with Netflix Productions, who's run by Drew Bolton and Jose Alvarez, who I've partnered up with on numerous movies. But Killer Unicorn, I mean, the premise is a really hot man with booty shorts on and a unicorn mask that's going around Brooklyn killing drag queens. Mm-hmm. It would be hard to not have an amazing time filming that. We got to run around Brooklyn. We got to film at our favorite bar, Macquarie Park in Williamsburg, who's been essentially a producer of most of my films because I make gay movies. So that means at least one scene is always in a bar. So Macquarie Park has been, a godsend, and we would film from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then we would just kind of hit up happy hour at Macquarie Park and do it all again the next day. Some of the drag queens in it would show up from their just in the look that they wore performing the night before, and we'd have to be like, honey, you got a 5 o'clock shadow. We need you to redo your makeup. But just an amazing experience. And just super fun. And then I would say my favorite movie to date would be Neon Boys. I think it was a lot of work. It's a drama. I think that was one of the ones that I had you watch.
Yes, yeah.
For me, I directed it. I had an amazing time directing it. The cast was fantastic. For me, it came out better than I could have ever thought. I had a 2-time Emmy-nominated editor. Not only shoot but also edit it, which was crazy. He did it for like $400, which is insanely cheap. He's a good friend of mine. I was very blessed. And then most recently, I had a really good time shooting my upcoming movie called Guys at Parties Like It, and that is a Me Too thriller, mostly a heterosexual themed, but it has gay storylines within it, because obviously you can't have a fraternity house without at least one gay boy in the closet. And then so we added that, and we had Yuha from RuPaul's Drag Race play one of the gay fraternity members that's sleeping with one of the straight ones. And we had a really amazing time filming that, and I was out in Connecticut, and that was probably the biggest thing I've shot to date, and we are in post-production for that, and watching my bank account dwindle as that's getting finished up. But I have a feeling that it's going to be, fingers crossed, the biggest thing that I have had done to date, and God willing, because I spent a lot of my inheritance on that. So,
Do you have like a
yeah.
tentative release for that one at this point, or do you not know yet?
Right now we are putting the finishing touches on it. We didn't feel like there was a big rush because, right now film festivals, although I love that they're still happening, a lot of your sales and stuff happens in person.
Right. Yeah.
So we just kind of felt, why rush it just to put it into film festivals where the after parties is what sells it, right? Like, there's a reason terrible television is on TV. It's because it was okay at the festival, and then they had a couple of drinks afterwards, and checkbooks came out and contracts came out, and it's all about the schmoozing and and getting people to like you, and so we felt as a seasoned company that has enough films under their belt, we would just wait this COVID thing out and see what that means. So hopefully, with different states opening different movie theaters up and people getting back at it. Also, nobody has any money, right now. So, our audience being queer people, my core audience being mostly trans and non-binary people, we don't have jobs right now. Like, we barely have jobs when jobs are to be had. The sad reality is it took till 2020 for it to be a federal law that we can't get fired for being queer. That doesn't mean we're not getting fired for being queer. It just means they're coming up with more inventive reasons to fire us. And we are an underserved community. We are an oppressed community. So right now, that with COVID on top of it, we just felt it wasn't the time to put out something that we hope to be relatively maybe not a blockbuster, but a film that is of more notoriety due to the subject matter and the quality of it. So we just kind of are waiting. So guys at parties like it, go to our Instagram, all that stuff, show some support. I would say quality wise, if you watch my movie Innocent Boy, it'll be of that kind of quality, very saturated, very dense, very deep and dark material, with amazing actors. But yeah, so we're hoping, God willing, people will wear their masks and keep their mask on and get tested for COVID, and so we can get out of this and see this movie on the big screen the way it needs to be seen, the way we want it to be seen. So, because it has that value, and we filmed it on, a red camera. We filmed it on the same camera that they film Stranger Things on. So to think about people watching that for the first time on their cell phones is heart-wrenching for me, especially since we spent so much money on that camera.
Right.
And we're spending money on surround sound, and surround sound isn't what people are using watching their computer screen. So we're waiting it out, seeing what happens, but it's amazing, and you're gonna love it. And it's if you like horror movies, and you like movies where the people that get what they deserve get it, you're gonna love Guys at Parties Like It. It's essentially, I'm telling people, it's American. If American Pie went horribly, horribly wrong, but also horribly, horribly right. Any men that it's so weird to think those movies were big in the '90s, because like I can't imagine trying to get one of those made now. It's a movies about manipulating women into having sex. It's just, it should have ended in bloodshed, that movie. So we're correcting that comedy and ending it the way it should end, in bloodshed and women being the victor.
That's a very, very good ending summation for that movie. I'm looking forward to seeing that whenever it does get released.
And you know what? Sometimes patience is a virtue. We wound up having our dear friend Monica Garcia, who was in Kill a Unicorn. The director fell in love with her when she was in that movie. The only woman in that entire cast. And she just killed it in that movie, literally and figuratively. And then we put her as the lead in Guys at Parties Like It. And while that was editing, Tyler Perry Studios heard about her and got her attention, and she was able to do went from being a day player on the show Sisters to having an actual role on Sisters, and got to, during quarantine, got to be on Tyler Perry Studios 14 days without talking to people, living in a mansion and with Tyler Perry people, and we're very proud of her. So I'm extremely excited for people to see what she has to offer outside of comedy. So if you haven't looked up Monica Garcia yet, she is going to be a household name sooner than later. So get into it.